Okay, we've got the red light. Is there anybody there, we ask? Right, can somebody tell me if they can hear me okay? B, UK Vegan Family, I'm Easy Vegan, can you hear us okay? Are we too loud, are we too quiet? I've got no watches yet.
Well, it's finally, I'm very pleased to finally be talking to you, Danny.
Yeah.
After, this is round 2, shall we say.
What's going on now? There's no, oh, right, is that loud and clear? Right, okay, we're away. Thank goodness for that. And it's just took so long. Right, 11 people have popped on now. Brilliant.
Nice one.
Okay, welcome to Grumpy Vegan Grandad. And I'm really sorry about last week. It was Virgin Media. It wasn't me not paying my bill. Thank you very much for the people who said that. It was a fault in the whole area. We did get sort of fired up and ready at 5:30. It came back on, but then it dropped and we thought, sod this, let's it was too important an opportunity to sort of let slide for bad internet. So I'm Grumpy Vegan Grandad, as you all know, and this is Rob. Rob, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, really pleased to be speaking to you, Danny. Round 2 seems to be going well. My name is Rob Cogswell. I'm creator of Vegan Edge and Life on the Veg podcast. I've been vegan for 37 years and I had been born, bred and brought up in South London.
Brilliant, brilliant. Not only that, Rob, you've got quite a, I won't say record, you've got quite a sort of CV in front of me here. You was involved with animal rescue. You set up the organisation Tail Ends to rescue and rehome unwanted dogs in South London. You were the chairman of the Animal Rights Coalition. You were the co-founder of SPEAC in Cambridge and the co-founder of SPEAC, Voice for the Animals in Oxford. You were editor of the animal rights magazine Arkangel and a campaigner for PETA. And then finally, you were the investigations manager for Animal Defenders International for the last 12 years. And as you've said, you've now set up the Vegan Edge, which we'll come to later. But let's sort of rewind the story backwards a little bit. You said to me then, you've been vegan for 37 years. Now, pardon my maths, that makes it 1983 when you went vegan. That's when I left school. Why? 1983?
Well, I think we're a similar age, and I was in the 6th form at the time at school. And why 1983? I guess it was what really changed me was the seal cull in Canada. And I was living in South London, or a suburb of South London at the time, called Sutton. And I was walking down the high street and I saw a stall, animal aid stall, and they had all posters of the seal cull, and one thing leads to another. And I went up to the stall, had a chat with them, talked to them about seal culling, and then you know, the whole aspect of animal rights came into it. So I first became vegetarian when I was about 17 and a half. And then I was only vegetarian for about 6 months and very quickly became vegan. Just because after becoming vegetarian, I sort of questioned the whole aspect of, well, if I really care about animals and I believe in the rights of animals, why am I eating eggs and milk? Because all that contributes to, you know, the suffering of the animal. A lot of vegetarians believe, wrongly, that if they have free-range eggs, that somehow those animals are treated differently to other animals, or chickens that are intensively reared or hens that are intensively reared. But they all end up in the slaughterhouse. It's a marketing gimmick by the farmers and the egg-producing industry. I quickly saw that and became vegan.
How did you get this information in 1983? There was no internet. There was Space Invaders. There was Pong. There wasn't even a games console as such. It was like, how the hell did you get the information?
It was incredibly basic. I mean, yes, we have the luxury today of anything we want to research. We can do Google searches. Then it was really subscribing, joining organisations like the BUAV, British Union Against Vivisection, joining Animal Aid, and getting newsletters. So the information you received was quite piecemeal. But then I joined a local group called RAMS, aptly called Rights for Animals in Morden and Sutton. And then you get to talk to people, you go to meetings, and through word of mouth at the meetings, you have speakers from various organisations come, and you're quickly educated.
Yeah, definitely. Let's just say a quick hello to the viewers. I've seen something about a glitch on the thingy. Hello, Bohemian Bee, Mr. Atlanta, UK Vegan Family. I'm Easy Vegan. Zactivist, Angrad's Life, Vegan Pixie Warrior, Naya Cogswell. Is that a relation somewhere along the line, Rob?
That is my daughter. Hello, Naya.
Hello, Naya. Michelle Lowe, Race Lever, Chris Grant, Vegan Realist. Hello, Tone, Helen Hawley, Nikki, Vegan King. Yes, was there a glitch somewhere along the line? What happened? Does anybody know? But anyway, we're here now. We're all here now. So you started being active in the vegan world. When did that start? So 1983, fast forward, what was the next stage?
I guess, yeah, well, we refer to it as much more now. Veganism has a much more of a high profile. Then it was more animal rights, and veganism was being part of animal rights. But first and foremost, you were animal rights, and obviously by default you should be vegan, because to be anything else would be hypocritical. So I mean, I remember my first actions were just simple little things, like standing outside the staff room at school, giving Vegan Society leaflets out to staff members as they came out. And obviously at the time, you're seen as a bit of a sort of a novelty, a bit of an eccentric within the school, because, unlike now, veganism is becoming a lot more acceptable and a lot more mainstream, and a lot more people know about it. But then the whole concept of, and I think we also have to think there can be a difference between animal rights and veganism, because some vegans, I would say, probably aren't necessarily familiar with the concept of animal rights. I believe that animals do have rights. I believe that, human, the same as the old adage goes, human freedom, animal rights, one struggle, one fight. And my campaigning for animal rights was synonymous with my campaigning for human rights. So, for instance, at the time of the miners' strike in 1984-85, we were doing sort of animal rights benefits for the miners. We would have we'd have sessions where we would invite Kent miners up, and we would be plying them with vegan food. I'm not quite sure what a Kent miner would make of vegan food in 1984-85, but they were very, we got on well with them, and there was a sense of solidarity because we were fighting for something and they were fighting for something. So I do believe, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's animal rights, I think we have a very strong connection, and that we should be comrades in that struggle to actually form a better world.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there is some history with the cotton workers supporting the civil rights movement in America, the slave laws and everything. So yeah, this country has been really good at that, but it's also been a very divisive country as well. I mean, we had the race riots in the early 80s, as you remember, in Toxteth and all the black areas. Yeah, there was racist TV going on. It was rampant, it was rampant. So there was a lot going on. So I suppose animal rights was a very sort of sideline niche thing at the time, with everything else that was going on.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, and obviously, nowadays there is the whole concept of, you get different aspects of the movement. You've got the animal rights side, you've got the vegan side, and you've got the plant-based side.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time there's certainly a crossover, but other times there's not so much of a crossover. I don't necessarily think that's such a bad thing. I mean, I think, to me, anyone who's trying to do something to alleviate the suffering of animals, you know, we owe a lot to them, and you know, they should be encouraged to continue with what they're doing. I don't think there's one size fits all. I don't think as a movement we can say this is the right way of campaigning, this is the wrong way of campaigning. To me, anyone who's campaigning, it's the right way. It might be different from me, but I respect your right to campaign in a certain way.
Definitely. I mean, I was in the gym the other day, and there was a guy that I hadn't seen for a long time because my gym closed, and I went back to my old gym, and the old school was still there. And this guy saw me. He saw how lean I looked, and he put on quite a few pounds. And he says, "What's your secret?" And I said, "Well, to be honest with you, mate, I've been on a plant-based diet." I didn't say vegan straight away. I said plant-based diet. He said, "What's a plant-based diet?" I sent him off on his way to watch Game Changers and Cowspiracy and Dominion. And then when the next time I saw him, he just said, "You blow my mind. I'm going looking for vegan food straight away." And you know, definitely, it's everything works to an extent. As long as you at least turn one person vegan, it's a result.
Yeah. And I'm a firm believer that, you know, turning someone vegan, even if it's for health reasons, even if they're environmentalists, I do believe that it actually it's set a particular grain in the mind that they become more compassionate just by not eating animals. They'll become more compassionate, and it feeds down, and they then become. I've heard it so often that, "Oh, I went vegan for health reasons," or "I went vegan because I'm an environmentalist." But then those same people start researching, just by default, they start researching about, you know, animals and how they're treated, and they then become a lot more compassionate. So I think, you know, I'm not one of these people who thinks you have to become vegan just for the animals and nothing else, because I think meat eating is endemic in society. It's almost like a form of addiction. You know, some people might be more addicted to cheese or the meat or eggs and stuff like that. And psychologically, it's been bred into people from a very early age that this is the way to eat. This is healthy. You can't be vegan. You can't survive as a vegan. You have to eat meat, eggs, cheese to get your calcium, to get your protein. So, you know, I think, you know, I've known vegans, or I've known people to become vegan overnight who quickly slip back into eating meat. I've known people to take a long time to become vegan, and 20 years later, they're still vegan. So to be perfectly honest, I don't care. Of course, I would like people to become vegan very quickly, but being vegan and the ultimate goal of turning people vegan is my goal, is Vegan Edge's goal. And, you know, I think that's something we have to let people almost, we can't tell people what to do, because by telling them what to do or demanding that they give up meat, that's the first thing that's going to make them very defensive. It's going to turn them against us. We have to coach people, we have to nurture people in order for them to become vegan. And then once they become vegan on their own terms, hopefully they'll stay vegan for life.
Yeah, and I've always said I went plant-based first. I didn't know. I thought I went vegan, but I went plant-based first. But I always say it doesn't matter why you quit animal products, right? Whether you go plant-based or do it for environmental reasons, all roads lead to animal abuse. Eventually, you will start looking at it. You can't avoid it. Eventually, you will come to that point where you think, right, I'm going to watch this now, and wow, I didn't realize that my choices caused this type of harm, you know. Yes. So all roads lead to veganism eventually. So yes. Yeah, I agree with you on that one. Okay, just quick shout out to everyone. I'm not watching the chat too much at the moment, guys, because we've got a lot to get through, but every now and again I'm going to say, throw us a question up about things, and I will then look for your questions. So just wait for me to shout out, you know, right, okay, let's have a look at some questions, then we'll go through your questions. So don't think I'm being ignorant. It's just that we've got a lot to go through. So we're traveling through the 80s. Like, Like
Yes,
Back to the Future.
I've slightly jumped, haven't I, into the future? Maybe we should go back.
Let's go back. So, tell me about your leap into activism and what you sort of started off doing. Tell me a little bit about that.
As I said, in the 80s, the early, mid 80s to the end of the 80s, I was doing, I was obviously doing local campaigning. At the time, we had a vivisection laboratory near us called BIBRA, and the MRC, the Medical Research Council. One was public, the National Health and Medical Research Council, and BIBRA was a contract testing company. So a lot of our efforts were directed against these particular companies. We'd organise demos, vigils. I would be going on national demos organised by the BUAV. In those days, you would have demos consistently.
Can I just put in people? How did you organize it? How did you contact each other? Because we didn't have like Messenger or anything, or even mobile phones. So as such, how did you sort of?
Each national group had subgroups. So they had local groups. So for instance, RAMS, who I belong to, would be a local group for the BUAV or for animal aid and stuff like that. So it was very democratic, almost like a cooperative. So yes, I mean, obviously the people that ran those groups would receive information from the national groups. It filtered down to the members, and it was incredibly efficient at the time, and probably not as efficient as it is now, but it worked. And as I said, the proof of the pudding, we would be getting regularly, at the national demonstrations, 20,000 people out. And on one particular demonstration, it was a 12-mile march from Clapham Junction or Clapham Common to Bibra in Surrey, which was a 12-mile march, and you had 20,000 people on that march.
Oh,
So yes, and then with the national group at the time, I was also set up a group called Tail Ends, or co-founded a group with Tail Ends with a partner of mine at the time, and we would be doing animal rescue. We'd be doing dog rescue, and in the South London area, and we would mainly rehome or house animals that have psychological damage. And there were many occasions where I don't quite know how we did it, but at the time we would have like 15 dogs in a one-bedroom, second-floor flat. God knows what the neighbours thought of us, but it was necessary, it was needed, and at the time you get on with it. I
don't know whether someone's turned a tap on in your house, but your internet's looking a bit sort of shaky and sort of pixely. I don't know whether you can see that yourself.
Okay.
But just keep your eye on that just in case. I don't know whether someone's stealing your internet from next door.
Yeah, no, I can't see that, and I'm connected to Ethernet cable as well. So
yes, yeah. It looks all right. You sound okay. So sorry, mate. Sorry, I just didn't want you to disappear on me after last week.
Exactly. Yes, and then when I was doing the tail end stuff, I was living in South London at the time, and I started to do undercover work, infiltrating dogfighting gangs in the Brixton area. Now, these dogfighting gangs were obviously made up of criminal elements in the community, and it was. I just felt it was my job because obviously I was working in the area. At the time, pit bulls were were seen on every corner, on every housing estate in the area, and the amount of times that we were homing or picking up pit bulls that had ears missing and wounds in their flesh wounds, and one thing led to another, and I suppose that was the beginning of my investigation work, well before I was doing Animal Defenders International work. That
was dangerous work then. I mean, you're dealing with criminals. They wouldn't think twice about giving you a bit of a kicking, or even worse. Wow.
Yes, I mean, I was young. I was idealistic. When I started doing the investigations into that sort of illegal behaviour, I was about 25 years old. Probably not as cautious as I might be now.
Indestructible.
Yeah, one thinks one is, but it might not match reality. So yes, and it was during this time that my investigation work was brought to an abrupt halt because, how should I put it? Having to infiltrate dogfighting gangs, I had to take on a criminal persona. I had to appear as I was one of them. And in the course of that work, I tried to acquire firearms in order to act as a prop for my criminal persona. And one thing led to another, and there was a sting operation, and I was arrested. I was charged with possession of firearms.
Oh, wow.
Even though I pleaded, at the time, I pleaded innocent to the fact that I meant no harm. It was, I meant only to have them as a prop and as a form of self-defense if necessary. But it did mean I did serve 9 months on remand in Bedford Prison.
Wow.
Which sort of brought an abrupt halt to the tail ends work, my animal rights work, and obviously certainly my investigation work.
Of course, because they don't allow dogs in prisons, do they? So, I mean, you could have been the dog man of Alcatraz, really, I suppose, if they allowed that.
Well, given half a chance, I would have preferred to have a dog in my cell than many of my cellmates.
Wow.
So it was a very, not to put a too fine a point on it, it was quite a traumatic period in my life.
I can imagine.
And when it did come to court, I pleaded guilty to the possession because, I was in the wrong. I did have a possession of firearms. The reason why was, to me, felt legitimate at the time, but I can see why the police would think otherwise. Would I do the same thing now? No, I wouldn't. I would certainly attempt to infiltrate dogfighting gangs. I'd like to think I'm probably slightly wiser than I was when I was a 27-year-old, and we're talking about 1992 now. So now I'm 55 years old. So yes, I mean, that was a traumatic time in my life. And when I came out of prison, I have to say it did affect me. For a while, I did stay away from animal rights.
Of course.
I obviously remained vegan, but I suppose, even simple little things, like at the time we had lots of dogs, and I would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning in order to walk them just because I didn't feel comfortable I wasn't institutionalized or anything like that. I wasn't in for long enough.
Can I ask a question?
Of course you can.
Did you get vegan food in prison?
Surprisingly, yes.
Really?
Yes, I was I was pleasantly surprised, and I got vegan food, and maybe it was because I had a prison officer who was leading the kitchen crew, and he was very sympathetic. And I remember times where I'd be at court, I'd come back from court, and he would come up to which was unheard of, he'd come up to my cell and would produce, and be very proud of producing a stir fry for me that he just produced with cashew nuts and things like that. Now,
amazing.
And even the other prisoners, I think they respected me for why I was there. Yeah. It hadn't been for criminal reasons, despite what the police might be saying. I was there because I was, genuinely trying to help animals.
But the thing was as well, it was firearms. So you're up there in the hierarchy, you're there with the gangsters, yes, go on.
Well, maybe I'd like to have played on that, but straight beneath the surface, I'm certainly not that sort of person.
Listen,
I didn't let them know that.
Any questions on what we've spoke about so far? Just throw them on now, or any comments, and I'll ask Rob. So, So yeah, well, I can imagine that was traumatic. I mean, I've had an incident with a couple of bank coppers, and it caused me a lot of aggro for 12 months of my life. And yeah, it's not a nice thing to happen, to have control taken away from you. And again, you can relate to animals having the control of their lives taken away from them. You can understand what it's like being in a confined space, or not having your freedom, or being worried about what's going to happen to you, what's going to happen next. That loss of control is a very, very frightening scenario for any animal.
Yeah, because everything in prison is controlled. You are totally, you don't control anything. And one of the worst things is, the fact, it's not so much prison in itself isn't the worst thing in the world. The worst thing is not having your freedom, not being able to do, the people there I found, the prisoners, they were all very sympathetic. They were very understanding, despite what, what you hear about prison. Most people are there, they're not, it's through circumstances that they're there. Yeah. How they've been brought up, how they've been treated by society. I'm not trying to condone that, but scrape the surface, and they're not all hard people.
Did you learn anything? Did you learn how to pick locks or anything like that? A few sort of opening door sort of?
No, despite what they might say about it being maybe I just wasn't there for long enough.
Right,
but maybe I didn't mix with the right people.
Bohemian P says, forget that. I'm not even going to say that. How did your family react when you were investigating dogfighting?
Well, my parents or my siblings certainly didn't know that side of things. I mean, my partner at the time knew what I was doing, so they obviously knew I was vegan. They knew I believed in the rights of animals. They knew I was active in the local group. But as for other aspects of my life, they certainly weren't aware of that.
Yeah. Another one from Bohemian B. Did you ever have any fellow inmates turn vegan, either then or later down the line?
It's an interesting one. I would say some people did turn vegan, but it was out of self-interest, because every week I would get food rations. So I would be getting vegan margarine. I'd be getting jars of peanut butter, more jars of peanut butter. I mean, I was getting like a big jar of peanut butter a week, and there's no way I could go through with all that. I was getting oats and things like that. So a lot of time I was swapping things with the bodybuilders. The bodybuilders wanted the oats, they wanted the peanut butter, and they wanted the peanut butter and stuff like that. So yes, I mean, loads of people were going down to the kitchens and saying, I've turned vegan. Whether they were turning vegan for ethical reasons, I have my doubts, but many turned vegan, but maybe it was just the food was better.
Cool. Right, let's move on, Rob. Let's go a little bit further forward in time. So you came out of prison, you did all your probation, you were finally a free man again. Yeah. And what happened further along the line? What's the next bit in the story?
Well, just to fill in the gap between coming out of prison in 1993 and when I started getting active again for 2000, I went to acting school. I know that's close to your own heart. I did some modeling. I did acting. So anything that really just paid the bills and took me to a different world in many respects, because, as I said, I think I needed a few years just to ground myself again and find my way. And so I needed a few years to cool off, calm down, reevaluate where I wanted to go in life. And pretty much in the early 2000s, I think I started to find my way again, and this has led me to what I'm doing now.
So, yeah, the internet happened.
Yes, not like it was now. Even in 2000, it was still quite basic. You'd have a but yes, I got my first computer in 2000, and I was asked by the editor of Arkangel at the time whether I'd like to take over, which I thought of for a while and decided, yes, this is what I wanted to do, become an editor and to throw myself back into the fight for animal rights.
So what is Arkangel? Because personally, I've never heard of it. So
it hasn't been published for a few years now. It was first set up by Ronnie Lee, Arkangel. It was very much about all aspects of animal rights, and it was anything to do with the ethics of animal rights, politics of animal rights, lifestyle of animal rights, diet of animal rights. Discussed all these things. So when I took it over, it was very much a newsletter, very much black and white, quite basic. And what I wanted to do was to turn it into much more of a professional, mainstream publication. So I made it a lot more glossy. I had color in it. I had photographs in it. And hopefully I just pulled it more into the less of a grassroots magazine, more of a mainstream, national stroke grassroots magazine.
Yeah. Mm. So do you think much has changed between when you started and now in terms of uptake, Helen Harley?
I take it in terms of uptake, she means in terms of people becoming vegan.
I think. Yeah. Is that right, Helen?
I would say yes and no. I mean, obviously, there's a lot more vegans, and it's a lot more easier to become vegan. I remember when I became vegan in 1983, I basically lived off sauce mix, chips and beans for about a year before I found my way. And sauce mix, for those people who don't know, was just like, I'm not sure if you know, Danny, it was like a powdery mixture that you mix with water, it would congeal, and then you could make it into either burgers or sausages, and then you'd fry them. Quite tasty, actually. But
a bit like TVP, textured vegan protein.
It had that as its base.
Right.
Again, we also had TVP was, you made bolognese out of it, but everything's on the supermarket shelves it was very, very limiting. You'd get sauce mix and you'd get soy milk, which was pretty inedible. It was very watery, and now you get everything known, every single plant milk.
Some amazing milks out there.
It's absolutely amazing. I often say, why limit yourself to one milk, such as dairy milk, when you can have such a wide range of other milks with all with different tastes?
Taste, yeah. I mean, I've had hazelnut milk for the first time. I thought something had gone wrong with it when I poured it out, and it was brown. I'm like, oh, the milk's gone brown. And I'm like, oh no, hold on a minute, hazelnut milk. Wow, tasty, really, really tasty.
So I do think that animal rights and veganism has become a lot more mainstream. We've got the films like Cowspiracy, What the Health, the great Game Changers film, and I think for those reasons, I've always believed that in the early days we were just sowing, and I still believe that we are sowing the seeds to the concept of animal rights, to the concept of veganism, and from that seed, that will germinate a larger plant, and that larger plant is more people taking up veganism, and it's only going to get more mainstream. So I would say there's less people at demos, that's for sure. At that particular time we were getting 20,000 people out on a regular basis, but as regards more people turning vegan, more people, veganism being more acceptable to the majority of the public, then there's certainly a greater uptake on that, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I even heard the term vegan until it must have been after 2000, to be honest with you. I knew about vegetarianism, and I had the same concept of sandal wearing tie-dye hippies, but Yeah, it was fairly well into the 2000s before I realised what veganism was and meant. Let's move on a little bit more. So tell me a little bit about SPEAC, and with a C, and SPEAC with a K, Cambridge and Oxford. What was that about?
Yes, when I was editor of Arkangel magazine, I was now very heavily into the animal rights. I was liaising with various groups. At the time, there was a group called the Animal Rights Coalition, which was basically just an amalgamation of local groups. And it was a way of local groups helping each other and cooperating in local campaigns.
Yeah.
I took that over as chairperson. And again, like with Arkangel, I wanted to make it a lot more professional in how it was run. So before, it was done in people's front rooms or garages, and I went in there and thought, no, this is, if we want to make it more acceptable for, I was concerned that it was becoming an elitist thing, in the fact that elitist in that only if you were an anarchist or you were a hardcore animal rights person would you be prepared to sit in a damp garage on a cold December day in Nottingham or something like that. So I then started to have the meetings in community rooms, and I would have guest speakers. So for instance, I'd have people from Sweden and the various European groups coming over to have talks, something that would make it interesting, something that would really, to get a different aspect of how they do things in another country, because maybe they can learn from us and maybe we could learn from them. Cooperation, I think, is the key to getting success.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my Animal Rights Coalition. I would be organising benefits and having meetings in community rooms, and one thing led to another, and that was when I co-founded the SPEAC campaign, which basically is SPEAC, and is an acronym for Stop Primate Experiments in Cambridge.
Yeah. Vegan Pixie Warrior says, what would you say to inspire other vegans to become animal rights activists?
What would I say to inspire people? Well, I think with just being vegan, you're halfway there, but I think you have to look at the bigger picture, because a lot of vegans aren't even aware of the arguments for or against vivisection or against vivisection. To inspire people, I think you have to lead by example. And I hope with the vegan edge, that I want to bring that aspect into it. It's not just about your diet. It's not just about your lifestyle. It's a whole philosophy. It's all about ethics. And veganism, logically, the next step is to become animal rights.
Yes, definitely. Campaigner for PETA. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, yes.
And what do you think of them now?
What do I think?
And it's not a loaded question. It's a simple, you know what I mean?
PETA is, as far as I'm concerned, as I said at the beginning of this interview, I don't question anyone for doing something. All I ask people is that they do something. I know some people have a problem with how PETA objectify women, how they their kill policy with the stray animals, and people have a legitimate point. So obviously I work for them, so I might be slightly biased in how I answer this. But I would say the same about any other group. As I said, I don't particularly agree with everything everyone does, but I will respect that they are doing something. So as regards PETA, they are an amazing organization for what they do. I didn't always see eye to eye with Ingrid Newkirk, the founder of PETA. And many times we would have arguments. But I do respect her dedication I mean, she has turned a small organization into the world's biggest animal rights organization. And I respect her courage. I respect her dedication. I might not necessarily agree with everything she does and every campaign they run, but I won't say bad things against her, because I think that's a slippery slope. And I would hope that other people wouldn't say bad things about how I might be campaigning. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. We are human after all, and we do have our squabbles. But I think what we do need to do is realize that we have more in common with each other than we have our differences.
I mean, I must admit, I've used PETA for sources of information, and there's some great information there. Investigations that they've done about stunning not working 100% of the time. There's lots of great stuff they do. So certain policies, like you say, have got to be, well, that's the way they want to do things. You may not agree with it, but this is what we're doing. And we can't go around criticizing everybody for what they do.
I think what PETA are good at is mainstream. They are very, very good at catching people who wouldn't necessarily be caught by other organizations, you know, because they have a heavy emphasis on social media, on the culture of the celebrity culture, and lots of people like that sort of thing. So as I said, I think, you know, it's about what suits different people, and PETA will certainly suit a certain market, and good luck to them.
Definitely. I'm Easy Vegan. Very well said, Rob. I don't agree with certain aspects of different organisations, but we'll support all of them in the amazing things they do. Thank you for that. I'm Easy Vegan. What's the reaction you get from people around the same age as us, 40 plus years, when they see you looking like a healthy silver fox? B, you're such a flirt. Stop it.
Thank you very much, B. That's very kind words. Well, I like to think that I'm an advert for veganism.
Ex-model.
Well, I dabbled. I dabbled in it. And I like to think that, you know, being 37 years vegan is maybe made me how I look now. So I do think it's important that we break down the stereotypes of what vegans are. You said yourself, you know, when you first heard about vegans, you thought they were sort of open-toed, hippie-type characters. And
peace and love, man.
Exactly. And I think those stereotypes, and I think it's up to all of us to break down those stereotypes.
Of course.
I mean, because again, once upon a time, it was very much, you know, a preserve of, you know, it was almost like a preserve of the middle classes. Yeah. But now you get every sort of class. And I think it's up to every one of us to be an advert for, you know, veganism and for animal rights, breaking down those stereotypes. However we can do it, let's just do it.
Definitely, definitely. We're going to ease into some of the videos now. I want to talk about your investigations for Animal Defenders International. But just to explain to us, Rob, before we go into the videos, and I'm hoping they're going to play these. Sometimes they can play a little bit slow and whatever. But just explain what Animal Defenders International was, because I'd never heard of them before I spoke to you. So give us a bit of an idea about that.
Animal Defenders International was born from a group called the National Anti-Vivisection Society. I'm not sure if you've heard of that.
Yes, I have heard of them. Yeah.
Okay, so basically it's the same sort of organisation, just a different sort of section of that organisation. That was formed in the early 1900s. Many of the people that set up NAVs were actually suffragettes at the time, and there is quite a close link between the suffragette movement. Same with the BUAV. There was a very close link between the suffragette movement and the animal rights movement. Interestingly enough,
very interesting. Yeah.
Yes, and as I said in the beginning, I do feel that, you know, animal rights, human freedom, animal rights is synonymous with each other, and we should build alliances with other organisations and other groups and movements throughout the world. So Animal Defenders International, I was employed by them after I left PETA. I was only at PETA for 1 year, mainly due to various disagreements with Ingrid. So I left and I joined Animal Defenders International. Now, at the time, I was just a campaigner for PETA. So I went for an interview at Animal Defenders International, expecting to get a campaigner's job. And all of a sudden, they offered me the job as investigations manager, which took me back a little bit. I didn't have to wait long, and due to my investigation work in the 90s. So I said yes, and I quickly became the investigations manager of Animal Defenders International, which has taken me all around the world. I visited countries Colombia, Mauritius, Vietnam, most of Europe, you name it. I've probably been in there doing investigations.
Wow.
And
sorry, go on, carry on. Sorry.
No, and I both participated in investigations, and in particular, I had a great team around me, which I sort of, I found after becoming investigations manager. And we specialised in covert camera placement. So we would go into establishments, set up cameras in those establishments and capture people doing things that they thought they weren't being watched whilst they were doing. And I also managed field officers around the world. So a lot of times we would take field officers from South America, and some of the investigations you will see on these videos are either investigations that I participated in and they were covert camera placements, or they were actually investigations that I'd actually managed and planned and then recruited field officers in order to carry out those investigations.
Right, so let's have a look at these videos. We're going to start off. Should we play the first one and then speak after? Or do you want to speak during it? Or
that's up to you, whatever works best, because obviously me speaking over might be
I'll tell you what, we'll play the first one. If anybody's watching, it does show animal abuse. There's no blood and guts, but it is quite upsetting footage.
Now, what I've tried to do with this footage is to include footage that doesn't. There is lots of footage I have that does include blood and guts and the killing of animals, but none of this footage does. So this was a 2011 investigation into the Bobby Roberts Circus. People might be familiar with Anne the elephant. We managed to gain entry to the barn that she was being housed in, and we set up covert cameras. And this Romanian groom was filmed repeatedly beating her over a 3-week period. And some people might think this is actually just replayed information, but each shot is a individual act and is a separate act of abuse. No, Anne was 57 years old. This is Anne after the investigation, and I'll just wait to tell people what happened to her after our investigation.
Oh.
This is her at Longleat Safari Park, as you can see, in slightly different circumstances to the barn. So with this investigation, this took place in 2011, between January and February. As I said, we managed to gain entry to the barn. We placed covert cameras in the barn over a 3-week period. Every 2 days, we had to go back and change the battery and change the card, the storage cards. Now, in my wildest dreams, I expected to get bad husbandry, bad living conditions, but in my wildest dreams, and people never fail to amaze me at the level of violence that they can commit towards animals. And as you saw in that video, that happened over a 3-week period with the Romanian groom. It's pretty much left to his own devices in order to inflict such horrors on this poor old elephant. She was 57 years old. She was riddled with arthritis. She was shackled 24 hours a day, both on one front leg and on her rear leg. And she had to live that life in a dark barn for months on end. The good I suppose the good news story about this was that, and you don't often get happy endings, or shall we say semi-happy endings, in that the Daily Mail, due to our investigation, because it was, as you saw, it was on every major news channel, they mounted a campaign. There was a big sort of campaign to release her. Money was given to the Daily Mail by generous members of the public, and she was finally released by the owner, Bobby Roberts, and she ended up in a Longleat Safari Park. Now, I do have to say that it wasn't ADI's intention for her to end up in Longleat. We wanted her to go to a proper elephant sanctuary in America. We wanted to rehabilitate her in this country, get her well again, because she was in a terrible condition when the investigation took place and when she was finally released. So there's no way she could have been transported to America. But it was taken out of our hands, by other organizations who wanted to run with it, who wanted to use it for their own fundraising purposes. We did the hard work, and then other groups came in. And the owner of the Circus, was no way he was going to release an elephant to Animal Defenders International when we had just exposed his circus.
And it's just, this is what I mean about the general public, is that they'd see that and get the same reaction as us vegans. They would see that and think, how disgusting. Yet, if I throw up a video of someone beating a pig into a gas chamber, bacon though, it's just, but without you doing this kind of work, Rob, and other people, of course, bringing this footage forward, I don't think the vegan movement would have any traction at all, because this needs to be seen. People need to see that this happens. This is in the UK, people need to see this. Let's have a look.
The British public have an amazing capacity to blame other. It's always so much better in this country, but it's no different in this country. We just have maybe a better marketing system in order to hide the cruelty that goes on inside these establishments. We're not as open as other societies.
Definitely. Let's have a look at the next one, which is the Danish circus elephants.
Yeah, again, this is just a little example of the sort of work we would do. This is a covert camera. Again, as you can see, it's a lot better quality because this took place in 2015. So we were now getting much better quality cameras. These are HD cameras. But the reason why I wanted to show this is that it just shows these poor elephants shackled in the circus. And again, there's a good news story here. Denmark has enacted a ban on all wild animals in circuses, and these elephants are now in a safari park with a lot more room, and they aren't shackled for the majority of their life. So once again, two nice stories in a row, in a way, or at least let's just say happy endings.
And here we have Peter Jolly's winter quarters.
Yeah, this is just me going into the winter quarters, and you can see how crowded it was.
Wow.
You can see the small space the zebras are housed in.
Oh my God.
We also managed to put up covert cameras in this barn, and many of these animals were kept in this. You've got llamas at the back there. And you can see the appalling state that these animals have to live in. It's just, they even had an Ankara bull or cow in there, and next one is a camel living next to it. Oh
my God! Wow!
And as you can see, it's not the face that the circus tries to present to the public. They try to present an image where all their animals are happy, they're kept in lovely conditions, roomy conditions, they're roaming the fields free, they're tightly packed into these small barns, and where bullying was rife. And you can't blame the animals. They're kept in these places, dark places, 24 hours a day, and they have a go at each other for obvious reasons.
I mean, how did you deal with the mental strain of all this as the UK vegan family?
I don't think you ever. It's interesting because I can view my own footage and the footage that my field officers get, and I can take on a very professional viewpoint about the actual what I'm viewing. To view other people or other organizations, I can't watch other investigation footage because I feel powerless. At least I feel in control of the footage that I'm viewing, and it's about doing the professional thing. It's about editing that footage. It's about possibly getting, filing criminal charges against the perpetrators, as we did with the Bobby Roberts. He was finally convicted. He got a suspended sentence and a conditional discharge.
It's not enough, but
it wasn't enough. But it did close down the circus. They never toured again. So it did its job in that way. So as regards the psychology, you never get over it. There's times with the fox farms I investigated, there's many a time I will just get the whiff of fox in the garden, and all that imagery will come flooding back. I will be at Christmas dinner with my family, and then that imagery of the foxes being electrocuted will come back. All those tiny little babies, those cubs I followed throughout their life until they were actually killed. And that never leaves you. You find a way of dealing with it, and you have to deal with it.
Let's have a look at that, Rob, because we have got some footage of that. So we're going to look at we'll go to the Irish mink farm first. Yeah.
This, again, just shows the levels of security that they go to, and it's up to us as investigators to try to breach this. This is electric fencing. If you touch this, you will get a very, very nasty shot. And we have to, so this is basically reconnaissance footage before we go in. So we're looking at weak points, how we can get into places, how we can get through the electric fencing. Do we have to go under? For instance, at Bobby Roberts, we went under, we dig tunnels underneath the fence to get under. This is the mink, as you can see. Mink are used to roaming miles. They're used to living on waterfronts. There's no water. They're living two to a cage. Wow. Mink are very sort of very territorial. And as you can see, they're sharing a tiny box with something else. This is
the Polish mink farm.
This is the Polish mink farm. This was in 2010. I had a field officer working undercover. This is a gas chamber. So they throw the mink into this gas chamber. This is the gas chamber being opened. You can see how piled high with mink it is, almost to the top. And they're very rarely are they putting the carbon monoxide into the, God only knows what's going on inside that chamber when the mink are being thrown in. They will be fighting for their lives. They will be gasping for breath. Wow. And they will be dying an agonizing death. And this is all the mink laid out. And you can see how many. This is just from one box.
Oh, wow. All for a fur coat.
Exactly. There's absolutely, some people might be able to justify the eating of meat. I can't, of course, but they'll argue its nutritional value and stuff like that. But there is absolutely no argument for wearing fur whatsoever.
And this is the outside of the Polish, yeah?
Another Polish fox farm.
Okay, wow, foxes.
Yeah, and as you can see, this is me just walking out. The small cages, animals live their whole lives in these small cages. They'll be born in about June, and then they'll be electrocuted in about December. So the average life of a fox is about 6 months. These are these are cubs. And what we did is that we followed cubs from the moment they were born. This is a mother. She will only be a year old. And then the subsequent footage you'll see is these cubs that you see now, they are getting older. So this will be them, same cubs, a few months later. And obviously, as cubs, they don't take up much room in the cage because they're very small. But as they get older, they're filling the cage. And sometimes you can have 5 or 6 foxes in the cage. The mother by this point has been taken away after, you know, she's no longer needed to feed them. She's taken away. Again, this will probably be in about September. This is the growth. The first footage was taken in end of May, beginning of June. And this is them in December. This is you can see they've got their winter coat, and that's just prior to them being they're probably weeks away from being killed. And what they do is they take the majority of the animals out, and one might even argue in a perverse sort of way, those animals that they take out and electrocute after 6 months are the lucky ones. The unlucky ones are the ones that are left in those cages and are used for breeding. They will be left for, they watch their siblings die. They will be artificially inseminated every year, year after year, and they will spend perhaps 3 or 4 years in tiny cages. They'll give birth to their cubs. They'll be with their cubs for a month. Then they'll be taken away from their cubs, and the cycle goes on. It's absolutely gruesome, horrific for those animals that are left. It's gruesome for all of them, but in particular the breeding ones, because ultimately the breeding ones will be hung up and electrocuted at the end of the day when they're no longer of any use.
It's terrible. Any questions on this before we move on? We've got one more video to show you guys. Psychopaths, yes, correct. What's wrong with people? Well, we like fur coats, mate. That's what's wrong with people. We don't see this side of it. Yeah, fur is vile, absolutely vile. When the fuck did we become so barbaric as humans just for the sake of effing fashion?
Yeah, well, I couldn't agree more.
Exactly. My first animal rights film, watching and hearing screams of rabbits being skinned alive for effing fur. Yeah, yeah, disgusting. Right, the final video. Now this is in southeast. There's a few in the Cambodia, Indonesia.
Yeah, this was a big. Before you, maybe I can lay the. Maybe you could just stop it for a second. I can just lay the groundwork for this. This was a very large investigation, the biggest one that animal defenders have ever done, and it was. We set up a fake company based in South America, in Peru. And the company was about setting up a primate breeding farm in Peru. So I got some South American field officers. We set up a fake company. We had a fake website, and we then approached various primate breeders in Mauritius. We got into Mauritius. We got into Vietnam. We got into Indonesia. We got into Spain. We got into Cambodia. And we even managed to get our field officers into China.
Wow. China, wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's at great risk to themselves because obviously, you know, going undercover and doing work in China. Unfortunately, we never managed to get any footage from China because the Chinese were very, very astute in how they, how they processed our field officers, and they never really let them get anywhere near the animals that they could take any meaningful video footage. But the others, this first bit of footage, which you can start now if you want, is from Mauritius. And it's Mauritius has about 3 main primate breeding companies, and they have dozens of farms all over the country where they capture wild. Oh no, sorry, this is actually Cambodia. It's actually a shame you can't hear the voice, the audio, because this man here is American, working in Cambodia.
1 second, I can actually rewind it and turn it back up. So let's just rewind it and turn up the. What you want to do with the animals is up to you. Wow.
Yes, I couldn't hear that, but he's basically, to them, the animals are just commodities, they're products. And as he said, whatever you want to do with the animals is up to you. They want the money, they want the dollars. What happens to the animals is of no relevance to them. This is a baby monkey. This is Mauritius. This is a baby monkey that's been captured from its mother's been captured. The baby monkey's been hanging from the mother. It's been torn away from the mother, and now it's been tattooed with its identification tag.
Oh, God.
And obviously we've seen tattoos before. This is Spain. Again, this is a reconnaissance with a view to going in. These are travel cases, which is how they ship the monkeys around the world. These are the macaques in the holding pens as I'm filming them. And this is our field officer. They're working deep cover. And again, they're being shown around the facilities by the owners in order to try and make a sale.
Wow, it makes for horrifying footage. It is.
It's not. But as I said, that's the that's the sterile view of the animal investigation work. I mean, you get a lot more sort of horrific footage than that. But I thought, in the interest of, because I know people, especially most of the people watching this are vegans. They don't have to see the footage, and sometimes I wonder how effective showing people the worst of footage, the worst footage is, because human beings have a great capacity to turn off, and I think it's up to us to try and gently coax them into watching it. And anything too horrific, that's it. The off switch goes up. So
you're doing this in Indonesia, Spain, a lot of foreign countries. Were there any sort of dodgy moments where you could have got into trouble, beaten up, arrested?
Yeah. There's my first. I remember my first investigation with ADI was in Vietnam, and we were there we found out that a particular company there was supplying HLS, Huntington Life Sciences, with particular primates. So we went out there in order to film the conditions the macaques were being kept in. And very difficult in Vietnam logistically to be able to operate, because you're not allowed to drive. You have to have a Vietnamese person driving you. So we had to sort of concoct a story that we were sort of bird watchers. And that was why we were being dropped off in the middle of the night or early hours of the morning in the middle of nowhere with ladders that we just bought at the local supermarket. Whether the driver believed us or not, I probably didn't, but he went along with it anyway. Anyway, on this particular occasion, dawn was coming up, and the idea was, it was an old sort of Vietnam War fortification, very, very steep walls and like cement incline to get up to it. Obviously some sort of fortification to make accessing the establishment quite difficult. So we managed to get up get through the fortifications. We managed to, in the middle of the night, we managed to film the animals inside. We were outside looking in. We had long lens cameras. We were filming what was going on, and dawn was coming up. Just as we were on our way out, there was a guy just standing there looking at us, and we acted like the typical Englishman. We didn't have the umbrella, but we just said good morning to him. And as soon as we were out of shot, we quickly scaled the outer walls, because there was a number of different defenses here. And then the chase was on. And basically it was something out of like a platoon, as we were running through paddy fields, through villages. We never knew who was coming down the road. We'd hear a motorcycle, and
wow.
We would hit the ground until they passed. Thankfully, we weren't caught, we weren't found, and we made it back to our hotel safe and sound. But for my first investigation, I think that was almost like a sink or swim situation, where I'd either, I suppose, in a way, part of the investigations, that there is something of the adrenaline junkie about me, and far from putting me off, I think I just I warmed to the investigations and maybe the actual danger that actually brings, and the fact that you really do feel that you are at the cutting edge of helping animals. And you're exposing the truth, and the truth that those people who are committing violence towards animals would rather not see.
That's the payoff. I mean, there's a big difference between that and doing a bungee jump. Thrill seekers. Yeah, I agree with you totally. It is when you've got doing such a noble act and you're saving other beings' lives and exposing this, yeah, the thrill and the risk is always worth it. Definitely, Rob.
Oh, without doubt. I mean, I'm not a risk taker in other forms of life, but to me, animal rights and veganism is the most important thing. I have been doing it for 37 years. I've been doing it since I was just out of being in my teens, or I was still in my teens at the time. So it is my life, and I take risks when it's something to do with animal rights and campaigning, because that is who I am. But ask me to do a bungee jump or climb a mountain, no way.
No, we'll leave that. Right, okay. So, hang on a minute. A quick question here. Do the locals ever know what's going on in these places? Good question. As like here in our slaughterhouses, experimenting facilities are always out of built-up areas. So, do the locals know what's going on?
Yes, I mean, take for instance one of my last, which you didn't see any footage of it. It was in Holland. And again, I'd got an undercover, someone working deep cover, wearing a camera, and it was at the Biomedical Primate Research Centre in Holland. And it's a big employer in the area. So many of the people who actually live in the area will actually work there. So they certainly know what's going on. I mean, but in other places, such as Bibra, which was my first vivisection laboratory, which I became aware of when I was, in my teens still, most people don't know what's going on, because a lot of time, as B said, it is done behind closed walls, and it's usually hidden away. And it depends what country you go to. Obviously, in certain countries, they're certainly less squeamish about how they treat animals. In European countries, they'd like to hide things away, and in particular in this country, they hide things away. I mean, as regards fur farms, in Poland, I mean, it's there because you can smell it a mile off. Yeah,
I should imagine you can. Vegan Pixie Warrior is getting a bit nosy here. How do you get the funding, Rob? Is it donors or? Yes.
Donors, patrons, legacies. Obviously, that is not my, at the moment with Vegan Edge, I've left that well behind me, the investigations. I don't receive any funding, but, you get members of, who subscribe. You get large donors, you get legacies. So, yes, that's how because, at the end of the day, investigations aren't cheap.
Right, can you just give me, we're going to talk about Vegan Edge now. So can you just give me the www dot of it, and I'll put it on a ticker below so people can see it. So it's
www.veganedge.co.uk.
Oh, I've done it in caps. Hang on 1 second. Vegan Edge, one word.
Yep, .co.uk.
.uk. 1 second. Vegan Edge. .co.uk. So, yeah, that's correct. I'll also put it in the chat. veganedge.co.uk. So, let's talk about Rob's next venture, which is the Vegan Edge. You've got an Instagram account named Vegan Edge Official.
Vegan Edge _official.
_official. So if people can go over onto that and click on that, all help will be appreciated. Tell us about this website, Rob, because there's plenty of vegan help websites out there. What is going to make yours special?
If I go back a little bit with the investigations work, 12 years of investigations work, I was seeing the brutal side of humanity. I was seeing abject misery of animals. And if I go back further, when I became vegan and became animal rights in the 80s, there was a real excitement. There was a real feeling that we were going to change things. Now, obviously, we didn't change things quite as fast as we would like, and things are still evolving. But with doing the investigations, I lost a lot of that excitement. I started to feel that, you know, I was just seeing the nasty side of humanity, and I wanted to get that excitement back again. I felt I was I was becoming a bit washed out after 12 years. And I was looking around for what would get that excitement back. How would I find that excitement again to be able to inspire me to carry on? And I came up with the concept of the vegan edge, because I think, you know, being vegan gives you the edge in compassion. It gives you the edge in being able to save the planet and save the animals. And I think it gives you the edge in living a healthy, hopefully long life. So that is where the term vegan edge came up. Now, whilst I was thinking about where I wanted to go after Animal Defenders International, I was looking around at various sites, and, you know, they offer great information, and a lot of them, you know, respect a lot of them, but a lot of them are quite complicated. I wanted to make something more accessible to people. Again, like I did when I took over Arkangel, I wanted to make it a bit more mainstream. I wanted to make it visually pleasing. I wanted to get away from the whole, you know, being vegan and having to have a leaf in the logo, for instance. I wanted to get away from maybe that grassroots or that sort of hippie type characteristic that you can get with some.
You wanted to bring it into contemporary, make it more contemporary and advanced. And
yes, and a website that one could actually navigate. Now, obviously, the website it's evolving, and it's not going to be as it is now in 6 months' time. You know, I want to focus. One I think is the major barriers of people not becoming vegan is, again, the many misconceptions. Now, again, films like Game Changers and other organisations are doing a great job in breaking down those stereotypes. But I still feel I can break those stereotypes down even more. So part of my a large part of the vegan edge will be about podcasts. So, for instance, I am going to be producing a podcast called Life on the Veg, the Vegan Edge podcast, and we will be sort of talking to inspirational vegans, people that break down the stereotypes, you know, women and men from all walks of life, all careers, from athletes to business people, and something that everyone can identify with, no matter where you live, how you live, and what class you're in. So from that aspect, I just want something that's accessible to everyone, break down those stereotypes by interviewing people, letting people who have a story tell that story. And again, most important, because what's important to me in my life is nutrition. You know, since I've turned 50 and I've been looking at the big 6-0 rearing its ugly head, I've been looking after myself a lot more. So it's the smoothies, it's the running, it's the cycling. And I want to introduce that more to the website. So at the moment, we've got sort of the basics about nutrition, but I'm going to be getting some nutritionists on board, some athletes on board, all to do, you know, to rejig the site and to you know, add those elements into it that maybe aren't there at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, I've always said that about old age. 90% of old age complaints are all diet related. You know, you've got arthritis, you've got heart disease, you've got, you know, stroke risk, premature aging, lack of energy, lack of testosterone. It's just all to do with diet. I mean, I'm running around like a 25-year-old kid. I don't care what I look like on the outside. I'm zooming everywhere. You look absolutely brilliant, Rob. I'll give you that one.
Thank you very much.
Begrudgingly, I may add. But yes, I can't see me being any less energetic, any less active when I hit 60. When we say 60, we think back to back to the 1980s, and we look at old people at 60-year-old, and they looked ancient. Yeah, they were crooked over. They had walking sticks. Yes, and people were dying at 50 quite often. Many of my family died at 50 and before they hit 60. So this definitely. And as far as the website is hitting different demographics of the population, people need people to relate to. With Veganville, they did a very good job on casting that. I mean, they cast me because I was a working class guy from the north. Yeah. And
that's what I said about breaking down stereotypes. Exactly. You break them down perfectly.
Exactly. Yeah. Because people say he's like me, and what? It's vegan,
it's brilliant.
It is. It works, and I'm totally on board with that, Rob. It is a good idea, and the podcasts, I think that is a great idea as well. I might be able to get Corinne Sutton to get on your athlete side of things as well. I'll have words with them.
Nice one. Thank you very much.
Yeah, definitely. So if people click on Vegan Edge, what are they going to see at the moment?
They're going to see, obviously, information on nutrition. They're going to see the podcast will be coming soon, and I hope to have that sort of up and running in the next month. We've also got a products page where we're probably one of the only sort of companies out there providing personalized gifts for vegans, which are made to order. So people can put their names on products, whether it's tote bags, whether it's drinks bottles, mugs, key rings, and that's a way that we're going to be able to pay for Vegan Edge. So if people, if people really do want to support us, and get something in return, please go to the website and look at the products page, and hopefully they'll find something that they like or would like for a friend.
Definitely. Can we get any guns?
No, past that, moved on.
Sorry, Rob, sorry.
Fair enough, I deserve that.
I just want an Uzi 9mm, that's all, you know what I mean? I've always wanted one of them.
Talking to the wrong man for that.
I live in Manchester, mate. I can get a rocket launcher if I want in bloody Manchester, don't you worry. So, the future, Rob. So, this website's going forward. Any other projects on the way? Is there anything else we can look forward to? Is there any other websites we can look at?
No, as I said, the podcast is coming soon. And another aspect of the website is that 10% of all profits from products sold will be going towards animal sanctuaries. So they'll be going to the Retreat Animal Sanctuary in Kent, run by the great Billy Thompson, and also Fiona Oakes. Tower Hill Stables.
Oh yes, I've got her trainers. I can run faster in her trainers. Did you know that?
I'm sure you can. Maybe I'll get a pair myself then.
You'd need them. Even my $6 million man slippers in 1978, they're faster than those, mate. Right. Believe me. Wow. Believe me, and I was fast in those.
Then. So so I want to expand that. I want Vegan Edge to really be. I want. We started off with 2 because that's something that is doable. But as Vegan Edge becomes much more popular, and more people come to it, more people buy the products. People know that by buying our products, they are directly helping, save animals' lives and to give a home to animals that need a home.
I think people are looking at your goods on the website now, Rob. I think we're alone here. I think everyone's jumped on the website. We're getting lots of comments. They're saying that the website looks great. You need to have a chat with Michelle Lowe as well. I don't know whether you've looked at her channel.
No, I haven't. But I will definitely make a note, and I will certainly jump on.
Let's have a look. Christmas list. Oh, Vegan Pix Warriors says the Christmas list is sorted.
Thank you very much.
It's all good. It is all good. Right, Rob, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Lovely talking to you as well.
Let's just see if there's any questions. So any questions for Rob before we wrap up and get the last word from Rob? We'll hang on. Let's have a look at a few of these comments while we're waiting. Let's have a look. Bohemian B. Very true. In the West Indies, they're not squeamish, and definitely just animals for food or clothing. Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of cultural sort of brainwashing goes on that it's acceptable to.
Again, I would also add that maybe they're just honest. You know, they don't mind doing the dirty, whereas in Western culture we pay someone to do that.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's worse, to be perfectly honest. You know.
But I mean, even if in a conversation with people, when I'm talking to people, I'd rather they just say, look, I like meat. I'm going to carry on eating meat. I know what happens in the slaughterhouses. I'm willing to push that to one side. I'm going to carry on, rather than come up with excuses. Just be honest, you know?
Yes. But I think, again, we need to break down, you know, I think one of the problems, I'm not saying the only problem, but one of the problems is that people see the actual amount of animal abuse and the amount of animals we use. You know, we eat 57 billion animals a year, you know, 2.7 trillion marine animals. And I think you need to break that down, because people will just think, well, me going vegan isn't going to make a difference. But I think if they look at the facts, and Veganery brought out a very interesting fact that if you're, I think it was Veganery, that's if you go vegan for a month, you'll be contributing to saving 30 animals' lives.
It's amazing.
And if you're not interested in animals, you'll be saving 33,000 gallons of water. You'll be saving 913 square feet of forest. You will stop the emissions of 620 pounds of harmful carbon dioxide being emitted into the atmosphere. Break it down so people understand it in as simplest terms as possible.
Do you know, I've been doing that because we know that 75 billion land animals get slaughtered every year on this planet, and I thought, I can't imagine 75 billion. And I got a few printouts, and one of them is, if you could live for 75 billion minutes, you would live until you were 142,694 years old. It's just like, you know, with $75 billion, you could afford to give every man, woman and child in Canada 2,083 quid. I'd probably keep it to myself, but it's just like these numbers are unfathomable. And when you start looking at trillions, it's like it's out there.
It's very difficult for the human brain to compute those sort of numbers, which is why I say is break it down to bite-sized pieces, which I think 30 animals, the amount of rainforest you can save, the amount of water you can save, break it all down for people so they really do believe, if I go vegan, I will be making a difference. And I think a lot of people don't believe that.
Yeah. When you say that it's 1,000 litres of water for a pint of milk, it's like, what? You know, it's just little snippets of things like that. It starts drumming home to you. It's not really a good way to sort of produce food, you know?
No, far from it.
I'm Easy Vegan. Rob, just want to say thank you. Such a legend. Keep it up. Amazing. I'd love to shake your hand and say it in person. Incredible. Thanks for that, I'm a vegan. Endless benefits and positives from being vegan, I assume. Oh, yeah, so many benefits. Yeah, vegan lifestyle.
Couldn't agree more.
Right, so that is it, gentlemen and ladies. Any last words, Rob, to the people out there before we wrap up?
The only last words would be, I'm not asking for a lot. All I'm asking is for people to become vegan. You know, in the grand scheme of things, I'm not asking for people to, I'm not taking away their tellies, I'm not taking away their iPhones. The best thing you can do for the planet, for the animals and for your health is to become vegan. So basically Vegan Edge is about the animals, the planet, and it's also about you.
Wise words. Thank you so much. Okay, people, thank you for coming. Please go on veganedge.co.uk, sign up, click on it, have a look. Please go on Rob's Instagram, which is veganedge_official. Go on there, give him a follow. Please spread this. Let's get this Vegan Edge website out there. Let's get people into, because we need to start bring the carnivore community, the meat eater community. We need to bring them all in. It's no use talking to other vegans. We need to get other people joining this. So let's see what Rob's got to offer. But thank you for joining me. I hope you all join me tomorrow for the amazing Johnny God, who went from bedridden to fitness Superman after going vegan. Join me for that. That'll be mega interesting.